I have the honor of welcoming everyone. I'm Gary Storey. I'm the director at the Challenger Center, and I've talked to a few people said I've never been in the Challenger Center before. So it's your first time, welcome. A little brief history is that we're part of a global network of Challenger Centers. There's 45 Challenger Centers, and we have them throughout the United States, in South Korea, Canada, and Great Britain. This is the 25th center that was built, the first that was built 20 years ago on a university campus. And last year we had over 8,300 people that came for programs like this, as well as our children come through. Over 6,500 students from our local region came through for programs last year. So we really, really enjoy hosting groups, and I've met some new people today, and just let you guys know we do a lot of different types of activities, and if you're interested in doing some retreats here, team building, or some programming, just give me a call. I got my business cards with me. Give me a call, and we'll accommodate your needs as much as possible. So welcome and enjoy it. We have some classes, some university classes going on, and we may have some team building stuff going on later. So if you hear some noises in the hallway, it's okay.
Yeah, thank you, Perry. We really appreciate the space being provided here for these lunches, which occur about 4 times a year. And this one today is really a special one. Do we have additional people that have arrived? Or? Okay, come on in. Your name?
Wanda Mays.
Wanda Mays. There she is. Right over.
McKee.
You have a name tag. All right. I'm really glad to see all of you. This topic has generated probably more interest generally than any topic we've had to date. It's also generated interest at so many different levels. It's been difficult to get everybody's schedule coordinated. I can tell you that's been the most challenging part. But we're happy that you're here, and I know you're going to appreciate the discussion that occurs. Just briefly, as it says in the introduction in your handout, the McKee Learning Lunch is designed to provide a specialized and actually quite unique type of discussion process that is intended to generate questions that need to be answered. We're not calling you together as a group of experts that have the answers. We're calling you together as a group of experts who know what the questions are. And therefore, we need, as a community, to know what questions need to be answered. And we will also ask you in the panel section, what do you think Chattanooga needs to do? And so this topic is ripe for solution and for further consideration. What we start with is a short presentation, and we'll get to that in a moment, and then there will be lunch. So you won't eat until about noon, and that's when you're supposed to eat, right? And we have lunch provided. After that, you will have an assignment to discuss over lunch, and we'll talk about that. And then there will be a panel, and then we'll be done for the day. Looking forward to it. To introduce our speaker, and as a kind of co-producer for this operation today, I'd like to introduce Bobbie Allison-Standefer, who, well, her bio is listed, and I won't take time to go into it. It's very long. And so I'll just say that she probably knows as much as any of us about this topic, but she's going to introduce our speaker, and so, Bobbie.
Hi. I met David a little over a year ago when he went through Heartland Therapeutic Program's Operation Song Music Therapy Retreat. Heartland Therapeutic Programs is now Rover. He was one of the vets referred by the VA to this program. After being in the Operation Song songwriting sessions, I must say that I have realized that post-traumatic stress is as individual as the individual combat veterans, how they see themselves, and what they have experienced in the trauma-filled twilight zone of all-out war with an enemy who would blow himself up just to get to you and your brothers and sisters. I would like to also say we now have veterans who are first responders in our programs, and they have their own post-traumatic stress. I have come to respect our speaker, David's abilities, and his passion to promote veterans especially from the Vietnam era. The Heartland Board, now Rover's Board, appreciates his service to us in our mission. David Rose is living his retirement years as an ambassador for his veteran brothers. It is his mission and the mission of Heartland Therapeutic Programs to seek out and help post-war veterans who might require alternative therapies when the traditional therapies are not effective. David was raised in a small conservative Christian community. He was drafted from college into the Army and served as a conscientious objector and a combat trauma medic during the Vietnam War. David served in 2 emergency rooms, a surgery department, a minor surgery clinic, a medevac dust-off helicopter medic, a ground ambulance medic, and a critical patient air transport medic. On his days off during the war, David arranged for armed escorts to accompany him into the jungles to volunteer as a medic by providing sick call to the mountain natives in the region. In David's civilian life, he worked as a first assistant to the surgeons. Toward the end of his 35-year career in surgery, David was director of surgery and chair of the surgery committee. After retiring from surgery in 2000, David started a .com business which grew quickly, and he sold in 2007. David performed stand-up, improvisation comedy professionally for 10 years. David had always wanted to be a mounted park ranger, so at age 58, he entered the university virtual classroom and acquired an education to enable him to apply as a U.S. park ranger. He enjoyed 5 years as a ranger at Glacier Point in Yosemite National Park in the Sierra Nevada mountains of California. David has authored 9 books, the last of which is titled Some Wounds Don't Bleed. Where's the book?
Can we have copies? I guess they're...
Okay. And everyone in here gets a copy of this book today. This book is a poetic account of his PTSD thoughts, feelings, and journeys through his VA PTSD counseling. For the past 2 years during David's PTSD therapy journey, he has been on a mission to give back by repeatedly pushing himself when he really wants to recluse away. David is a PTSD advisor and volunteer for 5 alternative therapy organizations. He has been interviewed on radio and television. He has co-authored a paper for the International Society of Ethical Human Psychology and Psychiatry. He develops websites and produces videos for startup alternative therapy organizations. David is being interviewed as a veteran suffering PTSD for the new PTSD movie Iron Will that will air for television in November. It is not David's PTSD nature, as he says, to be before you today. But ladies and gentlemen, here is David Rose.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Bobbie. Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules for being here today. PTSD speaker is an oxymoron. Normally, I am more comfortable in seclusion, but I feel that this topic is important enough for me to take the chance at exposing my feelings and emotions to the world in order to help you and everyone understand post-war veterans and the war we bring home with us. I feel like I should set you up for the next 15 minutes. At any time during my talk, I could become emotional. There may be gaps of silence as I recover. I could even walk away for a moment to recover from a trigger of emotion, but I will return. If that does happen, do not be embarrassed for me. It will be the raw PTSD that you will be witnessing and not me. When I wrote this, I cried. When I rehearsed it, I cried every time. There's a real good chance I could cry when I deliver it. I have to read it because I would never be able to remember this. This is the life in which I live these days. One of my doctors explained my PTSD emotions like this. On a scale of 1 to 10, most people live life with their emotions around a level of 1 or 2. Level 10 is high emotion and anger. I live my life with emotions and anger at level 8 or 9, all day, every day. So it doesn't take much to require such input stimulus for me to jump from 9 to 10, whereas other people have a buffer range of 1 to 10 in which to work. Now that I know what PTSD looks like, I know I had PTSD even before I left the war. After I returned stateside, I was admitted twice to a VA hospital for internal bleeding. They couldn't locate the source of my bleeding, but they gave me a diagnosis of nervousness and shell shock. PTSD had not yet been described in 1971, so they sent me home with no help. I didn't know what was wrong with me, and I didn't know what to do about it. Some veterans chose drugs and alcohol for their coping vehicle to bury their thoughts and feelings. I couldn't do that. I chose busyness. I ran from my PTSD. I ran from my feelings and emotions. I ran from myself for 45 years. One day recently, it all caught up with me. During my life, I left a path of destruction, broken apart families, broken relationships with friends. Lots hired me and lots fired me. I was seeking something in life I would never find until I was able to look inside myself at the fear and anger, the hopelessness and the helplessness that I experienced during the war as a combat medic. The summer of 2013, I was working as a U.S. park ranger when my attitude really started deteriorating. I could feel that my PTSD was on final approach. I resigned from my position early in the season and came back home to Chattanooga to see my VA doctor. She gave me a PTSD screening. I failed it. Within a few minutes, I found myself being escorted through the halls to the VA mental health department, where I was set down in front of a psychiatrist. He interviewed me farther and diagnosed me with PTSD and started a very strong psych medication. I didn't care about anything after that day. That was the first day of my long journey with PTSD VA treatments. During my 2-year VA journey thus far, 12 doctors and therapists have seen me. I have been placed on 12 different psych medications. I have endured over 300 hours of counseling and participated in 2 alternative therapy programs. I have been referred to an inpatient intensive care PTSD program and will be attending another inpatient program in about a month. Recently, I have chosen to no longer live my life in the thick soup of psych medications. I am med-free today. This is raw, unmedicated PTSD you are witnessing today. I am convinced that PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, is not a disorder. Thus, I have dropped the D and I now refer to it as PTS. PTS is a natural response to a traumatic event in one's life. Our brains are designed to protect us. When we experience a traumatic event such as war and other traumatic events in our lives, that information is stored in a place called the amygdala. There it is stored for the life of the victim. Then, when we perceive that we may be in danger, whether we actually are or not, those memories are released as a reminder to protect us, and we react in some manner. War veterans with PTS have been brain scanned and determined that the amygdala of these veterans is larger than the general public's because they store more traumatic information than the average person. After you're briefly learning of the life of one PTS sufferer like myself, it's rather easy, I think, to understand how such a condition could impact one's life. What is not so obvious, though, is the collateral damage. The collateral damage and how PTS affects our community is really what I want to talk about today. When my PTS treatment journey began in 2013, my 90-year-old father and my disabled former spouse lived in my home with me. Because of my PTS, we have all three dispersed and are all three living alone now. I was no longer able to function in my business. I had to leave clients hanging without work being completed because my productivity was totally absent. This was incomplete work that directly affected many businesses' success. PTS can affect an entire family, not just a direct household. PTS can create a dysfunctional family that affects the lives of each of the family members. This in itself can be devastating to a community. When you factor in all of the elements of PTS life, from work to family, PTS can impact many collateral lives. Multiply this personal scenario of mine times 1,000 of post-war veterans with PTS who live in Chattanooga and the surrounding counties, and it's overwhelming the number of people, families, and businesses who are impacted by these PTS sufferers. The VA and the Vet Center in Chattanooga sees and treats PTS war veterans every day. Hundreds of them. There are about 5.3 million post-war veterans in America. As many as 1 in 3 can have PTS. Only about 50% of the PTS veterans have reported it, if they even know what to report. Of those veterans who report their PTS, only about 50% receive adequate treatment. The Vietnam War left in its wake not only physical casualties, 56,217 warriors died in the Vietnam War, but also psychological casualties as well. The surviving warriors brought the war home with them. More warriors have died from PTS-related suicide after the war than were actually killed in the war itself. During the time that we will be in this room together today, two war veterans will make the conscious decision to end it all. Here are the real numbers. 1 every 65 minutes, 23 a day, 8,395 a year. These numbers are going up not down, every year. It's easy math to know how these numbers can impact an entire community. The Department of Defense has launched an initiative to raise public awareness to and reduce the negative impact of PTS in our communities, which is one of the reasons for the subject of my talk today. There are some elements of PTS condition of which we war veterans would like our community to be conscious of. PTS veterans should be able to select their own seating in public places, such as restaurants. We need to be able to easily view entries and exits to and from the building. Reserve stadium and auditorium seating near the exits for PTS veterans. Sometimes we may need to make a quick exit from the building. Comply with service dog laws. A PTS veteran may not have visible injuries such as a missing limb. Not all injuries are visible. The service dog could be a PTS service dog. Each PTS and each individual veteran is different. If a veteran or active duty shows you their card and asks for an unusual request, please comply. The request may seem trivial and unnecessary to you. However, it may be crucial to the veteran. Sometimes our fuses are short and our filters don't work very well. Please be patient and understanding with us. Most PTS veterans are not violent. You are not in danger. In fact, the opposite is true in most cases. We had much rather be back home in our man cave than out and about in public. If the crowds are big, we can't watch everybody at once. There are times that a PTS veteran may respond inappropriately. That's just the way it is. There are some words you shouldn't say, like, "Are you okay?" Don't ask what's wrong if you want us to get along. Don't ask why I sit here when I drink my beer. If I don't watch the news, I could have a short fuse. If I react and lash out, don't ask what I'm angry about. Any second, I could start to cry. Please don't ask me why. If you are interested in learning more about me and my PTS journey, as well as most other post-war veterans like myself, it's all in this book. Heartland Therapeutic Programs sponsored this book for you today. It's yours. Take it when you leave the room. Thank you, Bob. I'd like to thank the VA. I'd like to thank the Vet Center, and especially my one-on-one therapy doctors. You guys and gals are amazing. Broken bone, set and cast, 6 weeks time, you're done. Gut shot, bowel resection, 2 months, pain you have none. Step on a mine, amputate, prosthesis, 3 months you can run. PTS, 12 different doctors, 12 different psych medications, 300 hours of counseling, broken families and careers, 45 years of time.
I've only just begun. Some wounds don't bleed. Thank you for your kind attention. Thank you, everybody.
Do we have a problem in America that needs to be addressed? Called PTS. That's what we want to discuss. I want you to feel free to discuss the problem at your table. That's the way we designed the discussion. Those of you who arrived a little late, you've got a name placed somewhere. You can find your name and join the group. Spend some time getting acquainted with each other and find out where your connections are with this subject. And then we will have a sheet of paper that we will hand out to each. Oh, the note card, that's right, I forgot. You have note cards on there. The first assignment that we need to do right now, before we eat, this is your ticket to lunch. Write down one question, you can write two if you want to, but what one burning question you have about the topic right now as a result of David's presentation or your own experience or your knowledge base or anything that comes to mind relative to the subject. Just take a couple of minutes, write down that question. We're going to pick up those cards, so make sure that you don't have to put your name on them. And then we will do lunch. Okay, I've placed on the table a sheet of paper. One of the first tasks that you will have as you begin lunch is either electing or having someone volunteer to be the scribe. And that scribe will take that sheet of paper and summarize the questions that are there. These three questions provide the substance of what we will then discuss in the panel and the feedback that we will respond to in the after effects of the experience. I think that's it. We're ready to eat. So.
For my group, we came up with hell.
Hell?
Hell.
Okay.
The reason being is you're in an emotional hell. You don't know. When you're first diagnosed, I was diagnosed 8 years ago. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know why I felt this way. I didn't know what to do. So I was in my own personal hell. Confusion. There's a confusion on both sides, the civilian side and the military side. We're confused on what to do with ourselves, and then the civilians are confused on how to treat us and how to accept us because they don't know. They don't know if we're going to flip out and be, monsters or anything like that, which Mr. Rosa said, 90% of us aren't like that. Isolation. A lot of us find solitude in being isolated, being alone. And then embarrassment. I was active when I got diagnosed with PTSD, and the first thing out of my commander and first sergeant's mouth was, "You're useless." So, and then the military didn't know how to react. So if you got diagnosed with PTSD, they took your weapon away. They said you couldn't do this. So here's all your brothers and sisters training, but you can't because your feelings hurt. So you're embarrassed. So that's how we define PTSD.
Very good.
We did exactly what you suggested, which is to drop the D, and felt that PTS was kind of the overview of the category that we were talking about. But David was kind enough to join us at our table, and so our discussion ranged from multiple perspectives, but predominantly it was, exactly as he has said, the disruption of the ability to function, whether it's from your own personal perspective or from the perspective that other people have about you. We also discussed some of the other things that emerged, like intrusive thoughts, the difficulty to concentrate on things, and we talked about it for people who have been in a war or warlike conditions. We did stop short, just like you said you did, of saying there are so many categories you have to limit yourself, and that's what we tried to do. And we talked about the trauma that emerges and how it manifests itself. So it might not be visible, it might be more mental. It affects behaviors, it affects thoughts, and so it is not always the kind of thing that you're going to be able to check off a list and say, okay, I can see this person has it, because it may not be as evident.
Okay.
Well, our panel struggled with this question because we know that there is the DSM-5 classification, which says, you know, what you have to fit into in order to
Does
be
everyone know what a
diagnosed.
DSM-5 classification is?
And
Why don't you explain?
well,
Diagnostic and Statistical Manual
Yeah.
of Psychology.
and so what it is, it's the clinical way for them to diagnose this. And what the issue is that it presents differently in every individual. Some individuals do lose the ability to function, or they are actually quite high functioning or have the appearance of high functioning until they go home at night. So what we found was, in this case, the only real commonality was the military experience, but the symptoms can be wildly varied.
Okay.
Our group focused mostly on removing sort of the negative connotations and the stigma associated with it. We define it as a normal reaction to a highly stressful and traumatic experience, be it in the military or a history of abuse or something like that. We also decided that it's like a coping mechanism that's trying to save you from yourself in a way. We also agreed that the D should probably be dropped, that just the PTS is a good definition, or rather a good term. And we also thought that the emotions that are shown through it are merely a reflection of what's happening inside and not necessarily a bad thing.
Can I probe just a little? Read the definition that you came up with. I like that. A normal
reaction to a traumatic or highly stressful
With
situation.
what? I'm sorry.
a normal reaction to a traumatic
Or highly stressful.
or highly stressful situation. As a researcher, I'm intrigued by your use of the word normal, and I'd like to know what your group may have thought about the fact. If it's normal, then why is it a disorder?
Right. Well, the situation that the response is happening to is not normal. War is not a normal situation, neither is abuse or the kind of situations that trigger this reaction. And so, how does the body deal with something abnormal? I guess. And so, the normal response to abnormality.
The trigger is not normal, but the reaction is normal. The normal reaction to the trigger. That makes sense. Okay.
I agree with what he's saying. I'm an Army behavioral health officer as well, and I work with Army psychologists and psychiatrists and downrange in Iraq. We use the same terminology. It's normal reactions to abnormal events. The trigger is very abnormal, so your reaction is normal considering that trigger. We defined it at our table as a trauma-based reaction secondary to war experience, which may involve injuries or other losses in other dimensions of life. Physical health, emotional health, social relationships, and even a deep spiritual dimension as well.
Thank you. Any other things any of you want to add to it as a result of these? And audience, anytime you want, you can do the same thing I'm doing. If you have a question at any time, I forgot to tell you this, please just break in. This is a full group discussion with the panelists being the directors of the discussion. So any other comments about how you define it?
Question, people who had experience, do you think it's defined differently in the veterans genre versus maybe the non-veterans genre where, like you say, it seems like sometimes people can get diagnosis and get into services pretty quickly from that, maybe through regular markets or their own mental health markets versus maybe veterans have been able to get it. Do you see a different, people look at that differently?
It was hard for me as a veteran and someone with PTSD to understand that there's different types of PTSD. And I got out of the Army, I'm medically retired out of the Army, and then having to go see someone who is a professional or their specialty is PTSD, but they never had someone with post-war PTSD. They had worked with rape victims, they had worked with child abuse and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So I blew that doctor's mind. She didn't want to see me anymore because she's like, oh my God, you went through all this? How am I going to help you with this? So it's harder in the civilian sector for, I don't know how the reservists do it, and I don't know how the National Guard do it when there's not someone that's affiliated with the military that knows the experiences that they're going through. If some of you aren't military or in the police, you wouldn't understand having to pull a trigger. That's not a normal, nobody here is grown up or were born with, you're gonna be a killer. You're gonna have to kill somebody one day. So when you go to talk to somebody about that, that's never had to handle that before in their lifetime, it's really hard. So it's hard for me to find, if it wasn't for the vet center, it was very hard for me to find somebody that knew about post-war PTSD out here.
Can I ask, how, in what way is it different? Is it just the experiences that are different, or is it different in the way it presents?
I guess it's just different. Her reaction to me was almost that she saw me as a monster, that I kind of felt that as a monster. Like, oh my gosh, how could you kill people and still look here and see if that's just normal for you? Because that was my job. It was, if I didn't kill them, they were going to kill me, and then they killed my friends, and then we couldn't go back to my family. Whereas if it's hard to be sympathetic with somebody like that, it's easy to be sympathetic. Oh, you were raped. So you have that emotion with that. You were the victim. And then if you see somebody that sometimes they don't see the military as the victim because that was our job.
May I respond to that, please, Jim?
Sure.
I'm sorry, everybody.
And then Mr. Wire and Mr. President.
Okay, while he's talking about this, I want to respond while I can remember it. What you're saying is true, that a post-war veteran with PTS needs to have a specialized post-war therapist or doctor. And even some of those don't really qualify, in my experience, to treat some of us. One of my doctors was introduced to me and learned that I was a combat medic in Vietnam. I looked him in the eyes. He took 2 steps back, almost tripped over himself. He looked like he had just been gunshot himself, just learning that I was going to be his next patient. And he didn't have a clue on how to talk to me. And I fired him in 3 sessions. And I want to say one thing about what Chris said, about the spiritual element of that, Chris. That was huge for me. Remember in Bobbie's introduction, I grew up in a conservative Christian environment. Well, when I entered the war almost directly out of high school, the morality issue of what I was experiencing was probably as big or bigger than the blood, gore, and guts that I saw because of my upbringing, my Christian beliefs, and my sheltered experience in life to that point. So I grew up fast, I had to, and it hit me between the eyes.
With Eddie and
Chris said, and also I want to ask a question of Jeremy, is that we were talking about the abnormal concept of the combat scenario, that the situation that we're putting these men and women into are an abnormal thing, but the job of the military is to train them to sort of it seems normal. Whereas he stated it was his job to pull the trigger. It was his job to adapt to the situation. So it's the military's job to make it seem normal. Now, you and I, Chris, discussed the concept of why isn't the Department of Defense doing a better screening of these young men and women to determine if we are training them for the combat, do they have the personality traits to be able to come back and be able to function better or be able to manage the issues they're having? Because we're sending anybody and everybody. That my question to you, Jeremy, is knowing who you were prior to going to the military, knowing your own personality and such, do you feel like they did the wrong thing to train you and send you into combat?
It's hard to say because I volunteered to do it.
I know that, but do you think you should have been sent elsewhere to be more support? You believe that you yourself, with your personality, who you are, because I know you well, and I know, and so do you feel like that you would have been better off knowing what you know today, have never been in a combat situation?
No. It's weird. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I wish I could have some of the people back, but you can't have it. But no, I think what the military or what the DOD has done is they've let us all down. They've let the country down. We have 22 or 23, the number is always either 22 or 23 a day, of veterans that kill themselves, and there's nothing being done. These are 22 service members that went over there for you, so you didn't have to go. I mean, you were in the military yourself, and it's just a number. It's disheartening. I know people care, but you see pink ribbons, you see blue ribbons, you see purple ribbons, but you don't see a ribbon for PTSD. It's kind of like the silence, it's the elephant in the room. We know it's there, but what are we gonna do? What the military did was, I was lucky enough to get medically retired, and PTSD is one of my symptoms, or one of my things to be retired for, so they made sure that I had care for when I got out of the military, but a lot of them didn't. It was like, oh, you can't deal? Bye. We don't need you. So we're gonna train you to kill, we're gonna use you to kill, and you're gonna give us everything you got, but when we're done with you, you just go. So that's where I think that the DOD has made a disservice to us as in veterans, and then in turn, it's a discredit to yourselves as taxpayers and as citizens of this country that you depended on us to go over there and defend your rights, and you thought the DOD and VA was going to take care of us because that's what they were going to. Now, Chris is with the VA, and some of you, VA has totally changed in the last 3 to 4 years. It used to not be this way. VA wasn't a place that you wanted to go. And, I mean, let's just call it what it is. There's no saying VA gave you a second chance to die when you were a veteran. You know, they gave you a second chance because you were going to stay there and wait. But I can tell you from my experience with the vet center, I walked in and within 10 minutes I was already in a group, and then I already had a name of a doctor I could talk to. So it's really changed, and they're starting to change, but they waited so long that we've lose 10 years at 8,000.
8,395 a year.
That's been killing themselves for the last 5 to 6 years that they've been keeping track. So look how many people's had to die before the military and VA said, oh, we got a problem.
Chris?
I'd like to speak to that. I'm just going to present a brief timeline because I've been with the Department of Defense for 14 years and the VA for 6.5. So we invaded Iraq in 2003. 2.3 million service members have served in Iraq or Afghanistan throughout our country. In 2007-8, during the surge, we had 500,000 soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan. There was 200 of us in country. Psychiatrists, psychologists, and licensed clinical social workers that were uniformed. We knew we needed a decompression chamber. We needed a place they could go and decompress. We talked about Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Qatar, someplace, send them over there by the PGA course and take 2 weeks to teach them
stress management, relaxation skills, diaphragmatic breathing, everything Janice Ryan's teaching in OT. You know, it almost happened. But there was too much going on, it didn't happen. So in 4 days, somebody could go from a firefight to sitting there in the living room with a beer, hearing explosions. And fast forward to 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I've been a behavioral health officer doing mental health assessments for the Guard and Reserve the last 5 years. Just 2 months ago, we went from the PHQ-9 depression screen, which just simply asks, are you feeling like you can't eat, you're having difficulty sleeping, and you're feeling down, depressed, and hopeless, feel like you're not emotionally connected. I don't know why, but 3 months ago, we finally opened up Pandora's box. We are now screening every National Guard Reserve service member with these questions. Full PTSD battery, depression, alcohol abuse. Are you having marital concerns today? What other life stressors are you having? Type here what they are. You know, is there anything else you'd like to talk about? But it's 2015. I'm just stating the facts. This can be looked up at defense.gov. This is just our timeline. We needed to be more proactive than that. Instead of reactive, we could be more proactive in terms of assessment. Now we are. This is proactive for the population we have. What's happening is people are given the permission now to share, and we're calling it, I'm quoting the state surgeon of the Tennessee Guard, the new normal. We have a new normal now.
Well, as a follow-up, Chris, and do you think this is something that should be instilled in basic training in every branch of the military?
I think so. That's my personal.
And to his first question, do you think there should be a psychological aptitude test when they volunteer to see if they could?
Only 1 out of 10 would make it. We wouldn't have the
But then we would not be dealing with those 9 with the issues we're having, you know, today.
In the interest of time, Mr. Fletcher, do you still have a question or a comment?
Never did.
Oh.
They're very informative.
Oh, okay.
I made it stretchy.
Ms. Newman?
Is it the same among all wars? Is a World War II veteran the same as an Iraqi veteran? Does it manifest itself, all PTS is basically the same or not?
It was called shell shock right there.
Well,
It's a different label, but it's the same thing.
It's the same.
It is, no
I-
matter what.
I did 3 tours in Iraq, and I probably didn't see a tenth of what he saw. Just like when he was in Vietnam, he didn't see a tenth of what World War II saw. It's different wars. I never would want to have been in the military in Vietnam, just with the lack of equipment they had and the type of warfare that they fought. These guys were rock stars to my generation of a soldier because of what very little they had and especially how they came back. You know, Ms. Cook does the Homeless Veterans Initiative for the mayor. There's more homeless Vietnam vets, alcohol dependent and drug dependent Vietnam vets, mentally ill Vietnam vets than any other war, and it's because we forgot about them. So sometimes when I, as a soldier, stand next to a guy in Vietnam, I feel a little like, well, I didn't have it as bad as him, you know. So no, it manifests difference because he saw and had to do things that I never had to do, and because of him, I didn't have to do that.
And involved in that, because of the conscription, because of the draft, they were taking young men and sending them to Vietnam. First of all, they weren't even old enough to vote during that era.
Yeah.
The voting age was 21, draft age was 18, but they were taking everybody and anybody, and then just putting a weapon in their hand and say, go and hope you come back.
And then also to add to that, because of the controversial nature of the war, when they got back, they were not always sort of greeted as heroes prepared to fight World War II in Iraq.
Sir?
I'd like to be the devil's advocate here for a minute. I was a Pogey Bait Marine. I went in after Korea and came out before Vietnam. The only fighting I ever saw was in the bars in Jacksonville, North Carolina. I've never been a psychotic. I've never been an abused wife. There are a lot of things that are in that DSM that I have not been, although my wife might argue about some of that. But yet I have been able to effectively work with these people. I've been working with a psychotic 33-year-old woman now for 2 years who's not on medication and doesn't need medication because she's functioning. My question is this, or my point is this. I think the biggest problem in mental health right now is that people are not working the way they were trained. They're cowboying it, flying by the seat of their pants. They call psychotherapy seeing somebody maybe once a month, which obviously is not good treatment. There's no continuity. They have an agenda. They're working within the constrictions of nomenclatures like the DSM. I think the problem is that we're not really teaching people how to work with people. We're teaching them how to work with disorders. And that's not going to work. But I would ask you, what is it that you would look for? What is it that you didn't get in treatment?
I don't think that the military, because like I said, I was active. I don't think they wanted to cure me or get me comfortable in my life. They just wanted to get me to the point that I could still function on a job. They still saw me as a number and not a person.
Mm-hmm. So they had, their agenda was not yours.
Exactly. Their agenda, and I'm sorry if some of you may be psychiatrists, that, Army psychiatrists want to get you on the battlefield because they have commands breathing down their neck. You can't take this guy away from me because if you take him away for 3 to 6 months, I don't have nobody to replace him. And then he's still going to be on my books, and I can't get a new guy in here because he's on profile and I can't get a new guy in his spot. So, Vance asked me, was there a stigma? Or were they shy about diagnosing with this? Oh yeah, and it's still probably like that in the Army. I'm only 2 years removed, but they didn't want a diagnosis with PTSD, because if you get diagnosed with PTSD, as probably Chris can say, then a whole new set of actions have to happen, and it's going to take a guy out of the fight. And we needed, during that time, because I was in during the surge and all that stuff, you needed to have a guy in the fight, and there wasn't time to get them out of the fight and get us better, to get us to where we would function.
In the combat zone, we diagnosed with adjustment disorder. In the VA, we diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. Interesting, huh? They had trouble adjusting downrange, but when they get back, we can call for it.
All right, I'm going to move us now to the last question because we're running out of time, and that's really the whole point of our discussion. We've been really discussing the second question. So the last question is, what action should we take as a community to meet the needs of veterans with PTSD? And what did you come up with as a group?
We came up with raise awareness and encourage acceptance. There's really no awareness type thing for PTSD as they are for autism or breast cancer or any MS or anything like that. Make a new red flag list for suicide. We all see that list of, if a person's committing suicide, they're withdrawn. If they're thinking of committing suicide, they're withdrawn. They don't speak. They shy away. Well, that's what we do as PTSD. That's what we do with PTSD. We automatically shy away. We're not as engaged as anyway. So our normal is a red flag, so then you don't see it anymore. It's like, oh, it's just Jeremy being Jeremy. He doesn't want to talk today. But
That's the new normal?
yeah, that's the new. And so we have to find a way to create a new normal to where PTSD isn't just blah, it's just this. We have to find a way to stop the suicides and stop being ostracized from the community. And then create space and jobs to allow for independent and flexibility with vets with PTS. Rabbit gave an example. She's good if she's able to be free and not have somebody own her all the time, but if she has a overwatching boss that's always in her business, she can't function as well, and that's true with most of us. I don't always like to have to answer. We still have to do our jobs, but we make accommodations for everybody in everything that we do, but there doesn't seem an accommodation for PTS, and it's a real issue.
So we came from a non-military perspective for the most part of our table. And the things that we talked about were the acknowledgement that it exists, or even the potential for it to exist, so we're aware of it. Chief Fletcher shared with us that the first responders in the police department call it present traumatic stress, because it hasn't gone away, it's not post, it still exists, and it affects a person's performance and the way they interact in their everyday life. We talked about some of the things that everybody else has alluded to, which is providing specific services to these individuals, so there is an opportunity for success, as opposed to saying you're going to have to fit into what's already in place. And then we talked about the need for being adaptive, even if it's something as simple as a person who cannot sit for an extended period of time and needs to have that flexibility. So do you figure out a way to let them function in that setting successfully? If I'm in a class, does the instructor, the professor, understand that I might need a little bit of a different kind of setting? And is that person tolerant and receptive to it?
We looked at kind of a general overview of what we could do to help the people that come back with post-traumatic trauma. And what we thought was the most important thing was to address the red tape and the stigmatization issues that are associated with PTS. Mostly because a person on our panel, her father was diagnosed with PTSD, and he was also a Vietnam War era veteran, and she noticed that she made the observation at the table that even she, because she was raised with a PTSD father, would go and assess the room and be looking at the same things because he was super vigilant. She had to be super vigilant to try and ward off that thing that might set him off, and try to figure out what that is, anticipate it, and then remove it from the situation before it affected him. And so even to that level, treatment for those family members who have been affected, because many of them don't even realize it. And the other thing we wanted to see happen was to make treatment more available with less obstacles. For instance, so many of our veterans do not live near a VA hospital, and this is a real problem, to try and travel to a hospital. When my father passed away in North Carolina in the year 2000, we had, I moved my mother to North Dakota to live near me so that we could have some family with her. We didn't want her to be alone there. So when we moved her there, she didn't have her benefits. She didn't know what her income would be because, she was a military wife. She needed tamoxifen because she had breast cancer. That's a once-a-month treatment. And to get it at the VA, the only VA hospital available that had it, that would dispense it to her, was 300 miles away. So I drove over there, and we got all the way there, and they told her she couldn't have it because my dad was not living, and this was only for people who were alive. And so, of course, I finally talked somebody into giving it to her. But they told us the next pill she could get at the closer hospital, which was 100 miles away. Now, if people are in a critical situation and need to see someone 100 miles or 300 miles, that's onerous. That's ridiculous. We need to create some voucher system or something so that they can be seen where they are when they need help.
That's already changed.
Yeah, I would like to ask Chris about the choice program and how it's being effective these days, which would address that.
No comment.
It
exists, it's stood up, but it's got some tweaks with the bridges.
How old is it now?
Like just a year.
That's what I was thinking.
We're tweaking.
Yeah, there's still veterans who haven't got their choice card in the mail yet.
Yeah.
They've sent out millions.
We're working on it.
Thank you.
So our group sort of focused on like the civilian side and through specific initiatives and just general awareness. And so we think that people need to sort of get past this support our troops bumper sticker mentality, where it's like you put something on your car, you buy flowers or whatever, and that's how you show your support, and then you never really thinking about veterans again. And so we're wondering if people could move away from that to more tangible things, like supporting maybe innovative ideas like service dogs that work with veterans, because, you know, it's been shown that dogs can sort of keep them company and help people deal with issues, because if you don't want to be around people, the dog won't, you know, bother you the same way people do. And other things like, for instance, the mayor's office, it has several initiatives, like for instance, this weekend, on Saturday, from I think what, 10 to 3:30, they're having a donation day where people can donate items for homeless veterans who have been recently housed in Chattanooga. And so that's a lot more tangible than just buying a bumper sticker and stuff. If the community could actually get legitimately involved as opposed to symbolically involved, I think that could go a long way.
There is actually a new nonprofit in town, Operation Freedom Dogs, stood up by an Iraqi veteran. And Chris is familiar with it, that is training service dogs for PTSD. So.
Well, at one of the tables, I heard about this veteran living on the mountain in a cave.
I was talking about him. The radio station that I work for, Big 95.3 and Cat Country 169 are the Chattanooga flagships for Operation Song. Bobbie came to us about a year ago and asked us if we wanted to get involved in that. And what we do is every other Wednesday we have a veteran come in and we play the songs that they've written in their therapy class. And the other thing that they do is talk to us on the air about their experience. And we learn a little bit about the veteran, then we play their song. One of the fellows that came in was actually, what was his job? He was the one that I met down at that event we did in Catoosa County last year. I can't remember his name. It wasn't Will, but he was the one that was the veterans coordinator that was helping veterans figure out what benefits they're entitled to and how to get them.
Chuck or Chris?
No, it wasn't.
Not Chris,
No, it was the older fella. I want to say Will, but that's not right. Anyway, this was his job to help veterans, and he told us the story in the studio about a couple of fellows that were living in a cave up on Signal or Lookout Mountain, and one of those, they both had benefits coming and were able to find housing because they had enough. One of those veterans had $3,400 a month in benefits coming, and he didn't know. He didn't know. And so that's one of the things that confuses me about the VA is why isn't there a menu of benefits and which ones do you want? They're all available to you. Why isn't there some sort of a clearinghouse where we just have a menu? These things are available. These are what you are entitled to. But it seems like we bring them home and then we say, you have benefits coming. Good luck finding them. Good luck figuring out where they are.
Just to follow up on that number, when they get out, they are out processed, and a lot of this information is given to them, but they're not paying attention. They're just saying, I just want to get out. Where's my last paycheck? Where's my travel pay?
Right, I don't
And
know.
because believe me, I experienced it here on this campus because I coordinate the student veteran services here. I've got people showing up at my door saying, I want to go to school here. How do I get my benefits? And I said, so I'll sit down and show them. But yet I'll ask them, you do realize in your out processing, they told you where to get all this information and how to do it and what to do for you. And they would just immediately say, I didn't pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I didn't think I would need this information, that I'd get it later.
Right.
And it's there, they have to take the initiative to look for it.
Well, it's very difficult to re-enter the world that they had left pre-war.
Yeah.
And that can be traumatic in itself. So they can't process what they're being given.
And how many of these guys getting out of the military are running as fast as they can get away
Sure, I
from that?
understand. I did.
And then, and I guess the other thing, as far as having that menu of services, it probably deserves a refresher every now and again so that they can know, especially when they're coming in and they're in crisis, to lay that out for them again and say, here's what you are entitled to. Because like I said, that fellow told us he found this guy living in a cave up there, and he was entitled to benefits that totaled $3,400 a month. They found him an apartment, that got him some health care. He was living in a cave. He didn't know he had benefits.
I'd like to ask, somebody might have a resource question on this, but, you know, I know that we have a very large, massive military system that we're dealing with, a lot of soldiers, but there are other countries that have had other armies and soldiers involved with military conflicts and those types of things. Do we not see any best practices? Do we not see things going on in other countries of how they handle the military and how they do these types of things that we can look at and say, I mean, in most organizations of any type of thing, any business, you try to see what's working, what's not working. So I'm saying, are there models out there that seem to be doing better? Because I think like we got bits and pieces of things. So go ahead.
Jeremy, go ahead.
I lived in Germany for 7.5 years. My wife is German, and that's where I'm going to go back to. Germany's a great example, but we as Americans would never do it because they pay 19.4% tax. And it's all about a tax hike. It's all about, if you want to take care of us, you've got to pay, and nobody wants to pay. Really and truly. It's not, I'm not saying you in particular, but that's the whole thing. These other countries only send 500 to 600 soldiers. We send 500,000 soldiers. So you can't really take the model of Japan, who sent a total of 350 soldiers, and use their model when we're sending 500,000. And it's also an arrogance on our government's part. These guys that have been in power or been in Congress and the Senate for 30 to 35 years don't think that anything needs to be changed because it works for them.
Chris?
I would, in response to that, there is a best practice that I really love going on right now in healthcare. It's called whole health coaching. And whole health coaching, imagine a 5-point scale. Since the injuries we're talking about have physical, social, emotional, spiritual, and relational injuries, the whole health coaching assesses that patient in their physical, social, emotional, spiritual, and relational dimensions. And the exciting stuff going on right now is with Heartland Therapeutic and Rover and Operation Song and their relationship with Camping World and UTC and the kayaking program with the city. It's the whole health goals that will help them find their new normal and help them maybe find peace fly fishing with Healing Waters, or maybe writing a song with a Nashville songwriter who wrote a song for Blake Shelton and Keith Urban that Bobbie's brought to town. So to me, that's where the VA, we're not that nimble. It's hard to bring Blake Shelton songwriter into the clinic and start writing songs. There's about 19 forms for that, but they can do it apparently in 2 days. Bobbie can.
Isn't it? No.
But we need that kind of holistic healing, and the therapeutic recreation and disabled sports initiatives are doing that for our veterans.
And
There's
that's
awesome
in
stuff.
response to the Walter Reed white paper that came out in 2012, telling the VA to go out and do find outside organizations because they can't do it themselves. And Chris actually approached us years ago looking for alternative therapies for veterans. So there are some therapists at the VA who have recognized that they need help in the holistic.
Acupuncture, massage.
Yeah.
But there is, but that doesn't make, I mean, there is. But I think what the gentleman here was wanting is like, why can't our government do it? And it's because they're so reluctant to change, or
But why do
there's
we
so
want
many.
government to do it? Why can't we put on partnerships, social, we have a public-private social partnership going on right now, putting together some magnificent things you're about to hear about. You haven't heard of.
And I love that, but as me as a veteran, I put my trust in that government. That government used me. And when I have to go to see you, even though you're great and everything's great, it's like they don't want to help me. They can't help me. They can use me, the government. They can use me and now they're just going to throw me to you, even though you may be a better thing. But it's like, you're no longer our problem anymore. Go see them. But wait a minute, I gave you 16 and a half years of my life, and all you're just going to do is you're going to wash your hands and say, hey, go over there.
I'll tell you.
That's what it is.
I'll tell you what, Jeremy, because we're still in the realm, not just in government healthcare, but in private healthcare, of disease management.
Sure.
We're still in diagnose, the ICD-9 code and the DSM-5, treat it with this medication.
Yep.
And then, well, good luck. Check out to your left there, and she'll be able to see you, and I'll see you in 3 months, or I'll see you in 2 weeks. Hopefully next week. I mean, but we've got to be able to have private-public partnerships so we can have the seamless warm handoff. Because you're right, the mammoth aircraft carrier that is the government isn't quite there yet. We can't do 180s and go, yeah, it's turning like this. It might be 2030 by the time we're offering massage, acupuncture, yoga class in the lobby, and have a green zone room where we can literally find our happy place off the lobby. I would love to see that, but right now it's going to take a place like Heartland and Rover to do it, which is why the Secretary said, let's open up the public-private partnerships.
And may I add also maybe sustainability of that. I think sometimes we have a lot of great initiative, but it sounds like this is a problem that's going to have to be sustained for a long period of time.
And that's the thing is, if it's not, how much funding can the private sector still compete with? You see what I'm saying? And that's the way I look at it is, okay, you have an organization that can be around 10 to 20 years, but one slip up and that company can go under. But then the government's been around for over 200 years. If they're able to put their stamp on it or put their hold and their funding in it to make sure that those programs don't go away, but still be able to adapt and overcome any of the obstacles. That's what I would like.
With their grant cycles right now. The DOD just came out with, what, $8 million, and there are grants that the government's trying to make available so that outside organizations like ours can be sustainable. And, you know, you're right. We could raise taxes to where everybody would be paying taxes instead of eating, but
our country's also lost their vested interest in our military, and because, you know, why? Because there's no longer a draft.
right.
There was a time in our society that every family throughout the country thought they had a vested interest because any one of them could go at any time because their government was telling them to. Once the volunteer army, they were looking at the volunteers, like Jeremy, myself, at that era, who then said, you know, oh, well, we got people who's going to do that. I don't have to worry about that anymore. And then when it pops up, you know, but I'm going to make one more comment here that it's going to be like the devil's advocate here, that our veterans also, I get tired of the entitlement. They feel like they're entitled. Because yes, they served our country. They served it bravely and proudly and put themselves in harm's way, so many of us did not have to. But I'll stop and I remind the veterans I work with, there's not another corporation in the world, because our military is like a huge corporation that pays them, that allows them to enter into there, and they train them for, to become highly trained professionals. They put clothes on their back, they feed them, and give them someplace to live. They then say, at the end of your contract, if you want to stick around and extend your contract, we'll keep you if you like. We'll give you a chance for advancement to get more money. Well, even after 20 years, you're vested to where now you'll get a retirement, and when you get out, we'll give you medical. We'll give you home loans. We'll give you everything you need to continue to live your life as an American because you served our country. There is not another corporation in the world that would do that. Go to work for Blue Cross Blue Shield and work 3 years for them. When it's time to leave, they'll say, thank you very much, good luck. Nothing. You can't get Blue Cross Blue Shield to give you a dime, help you out with anything. And I'm using them as just as an example of any corporation. So the services are there, and it's up to the veteran to stand up and say, I know my services are there. Let me get the services that you're offering me. That we should not be having to hold their hands every 5 minutes to get there.
But it's like working with an octopus. The government's like, which arm do you take?
No, I agree with you. I understand. But,
I'm going to impose the prerogative of the chair because we are now out of time. But I did promise Mr. Wyram that he could tell us about the green zone.
For those of us that are on this campus, I am going to ask, is there anybody who's actually taken the Green Zone training at this point? I know Rabbit has, Jeremy has. Green Zone is a program that we established here on campus in conjunction with the Veteran Services, the Counseling Services, and the Student Veterans Organization. That this is the emblem that we have here on campus called Green Zone. The Green Zone program is designed to train our faculty and our staff to understand the unique needs of our student veterans on campus. This also includes the dependents who are using the GI Bill, because you can say, you can call them the military brats, if you will, that they are using the dependents that their mom and or dad earned for them to be able to come to school and use the GI Bill. They too have lived the life in the military. Because as far as I'm concerned, when we serve our veterans, we also serve the families because they too served. Green Zone, again, is a program designed to help the people to understand, our faculty and staff understand what the unique needs of our student veterans in the transition from the military to academic life. To understand that these veterans might need some place to have a quick egress in the classroom, that they need to sit in the same spot every time they go into the classroom. But again, just because they're having these type of little issues that makes them comfortable in their academic life, doesn't mean that they're going to have outbursts in the classrooms. They help them understand the transition of the military deployment transitions and what it's like to be in the middle of your academic career, then all of a sudden, because you're still in the military, that your unit has been called up to orders and they have to leave. Now they have to drop classes and attempt to start over again when they do, get back home. That this is designed, also we discuss in depth the PTS issues and the TBI issues. That again helps to understand that anybody who's got the Green Zone training, that they're now a Green Zone ally and they have this emblem on their door. Now our veterans know, our servicemen and women and dependents know, they see this emblem on that office door, this person is an ally to them. That if they need anything, they can approach them, say, hi, I'm a veteran, can I ask you to help me out with something? It might be, I just need to know where the men's room is at. Or I need to know where financial aid is at, or can you help me because I'm having some emotional issues now. They're not trained to be counselors. They're trained to understand, to be open and be willing to listen, and we give them the resources right at their fingertips. They're saying, okay, let me get you right here, this is where you need to be. Whether it be to get our counseling services, whether it be on campus or off campus, and or the men's room is down the floor, just down the hall.
I would like to commend you for that because they do have unique needs. Do you have anybody that trains as far as the medical aspects associated with TBI?
But we do have professional counselors who are part of this training.
Right.
And again, all we're doing again is just giving them, the participants in there, we're giving them the understanding, the concept of where this is all coming from. And to understand that PTS is not an issue that they need to be worried about.
And what I'm hearing is what Chris suggested right at the close of what I think was a really nice place to end, and that is the holistic view. You're looking at a holistic and also a partnership with the community and the university and the military all working together. And it sounds to me like what you concluded as a group is that that's where we gotta go. Yes, sir.
Can community members attend the Green Zone training and become your allies outside of UTC's walls?
I'm sorry, Pete?
Can like community allies
definitely.
like us attend the training?
Yes, you can.
Because I'd like to have that Green Zone sticker on my office where I see 1,000 vets a year and then help that bridge transition to you,
Yes,
it would be a partner.
We also do the Green Zone training tour where you can actually take it to your organization and then have some form of a Green Zone type of training in your organization if you find that you do work with veterans on a regular basis.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I know that we can go on for the rest of the day with this, and it's just been an incredibly informative opportunity. We're over time. In order to, we can stay and talk some more, but the official end of time is now, and you can leave, but you have to turn in that one sheet of paper with.
Good to see you.